She thought her story ended in heartbreak until love knocked twice. But when her second chance is torn away in handcuffs, she's left to choose between the past that saved her and the truth that could destroy her. Will love survive the secrets buried beneath it? Stay tuned because you are about to watch a story filled with redemption, resilience, and love. Hello, family. Welcome to Storytime Mutually. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories. Like and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Emily sat still on the edge of the couch, unable to speak. Her fingers were wrapped tightly around the edge of a pillow, and her eyes were locked on the front door where, just moments ago, James had been taken away in handcuffs. The same James who helped her learn to walk again. The same James who cooked beside her, held her when she cried, and told her she was beautiful even when she felt broken.
Gone.
Her ears still echoed with his voice, shouting back as the police dragged him away. Emily, I swear I didn't do it. Please believe me. Her heart pounded so loudly, she could barely hear Grace's voice calling her name. Emily, her mother said gently, sitting beside her. Talk to me, sweetheart. But Emily couldn't speak.
She didn't know what to say.
Her heart was breaking in too many places. She felt betrayed, confused, scared, and somewhere deep inside, she was starting to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time.
Doubt.
She stood up slowly, her legs still shaky from recovery, and walked to the window. Outside, the flashing police lights were fading down the road. James was gone. She whispered, "This can't be happening." Grace walked up behind her and rested a hand on her shoulder. We don't know anything for sure yet. People are too quick to assume the worst. But what if it's true? Emily asked, her voice trembling. What if I let someone back into my life who killed Alexander? Grace sighed. I don't believe that. I don't believe he's capable of that. And deep down, I don't think you do either. Emily wiped her face slowly. But the police, they had evidence. They wouldn't arrest him without something. They could be wrong, Grace said calmly. It happens. Emily didn't respond. Her mind was spinning. She thought back to all the quiet evenings they spent together, the way James helped her sit up after surgery, how he cried when she took her first steps again, the way he always stayed patient, never forcing her to rush into love. Could that man, really be a murderer? The next day was worse. Reporters surrounded the house. Camera flashes exploded every time she peeked through the curtains. James Carter, second chance or silent killer? The widow and the suspect. Is there more to the story? Her phone was filled with messages. Old friends. Clients. Even strangers. Everyone wanted answers. Emily shut it off. She sat alone in the living room, staring at nothing. Her tea had gone cold in her hands. Grace brought her food, but she barely touched it. She replayed the last few months in her mind like a film, over and over. Had there been signs she missed? Had she trusted too easily? Had she let her heart speak louder than her mind? That night, Grace came into her room and sat on the edge of her bed. Emily, she said gently, I know this is hard, but you can't let fear silence you. You have a right to know the truth, and so does James. Emily turned to her slowly. What if I find something that proves he did it? Grace didn't flinch.
Then you'll know.
But what if you find proof he didn't? Will you live the rest of your life wondering if you let the right person slip away again? Emily sat up straighter. She hadn't thought of that. So far, she had only been afraid of the truth. But now, she was starting to fear the unknown more. She whispered, Then I have to find out. The next morning, she called a private investigator. A woman named Sandra, recommended quietly by one of Emily's old colleagues from the bank. Sandra came by that afternoon, wearing a plain black blazer and carrying a thick notepad. I don't believe everything the police say, she told Emily after hearing the story. Especially not when they rush and arrest to calm the media. Emily looked at her. So you think he could be innocent? Sandra leaned back. That's what I'm going to find out. And just like that, the search began. Phone records. security cameras, business logs, anything connected to the night Alexander died. Emily spent hours going through files, emails, old messages, looking for anything that didn't make sense. It was hard. It was painful. But she kept going. Because James deserved that much. And so did Alexander. One evening, after hours of reading through old documents, Emily found something strange. An email from months ago, sent to Alexander, warning him to back off from a business deal. No sender listed. No reply from Alexander. But the name of the company mentioned? Benton Real Estate. Emily blinked. She had heard that name before. It was a company that went bankrupt shortly before Alexander's final investment, due to a failed partnership. And the CEO? A man named Mark Benton. She searched his name online. Photos. News articles. Financial records. And then she found it. A photo of Mark Benton standing beside Alexander from years ago. Emily's heart skipped, because she had seen that face before. Emily stared at the photo on her laptop screen, her heart pounding. There he was, Mark Benton, standing next to Alexander at a business conference years ago. His face wasn't smiling. His expression was stiff, almost forced. At the time, they had partnered on a luxury estate project. But the project fell apart after rumors of fraud, and Benton's company went bankrupt shortly after. Emily leaned closer, studying the lines of his face, trying to place where she had seen him recently. Then it clicked. The video footage. The flash drive that arrived in the mail. The man stepping out of the black car, the tall frame, the build. It was him. She quickly opened the video again, pausing it just as the mystery man stepped into the streetlight. It wasn't the clearest image, but it was enough. The face shape. The hairline. Even the way he walked. It was Mark Benton. Emily's breath caught in her throat. This man, he had a reason. He had a history with Alexander. And now, James was being blamed for what Benton had done. She grabbed her phone and called Sandra, the private investigator. I found something, Emily said quickly. I need you to come. Right now. Sandra arrived within the hour. Emily showed her the email warning Alexander to back off, then the photo of Benton, and finally the video footage. Sandra sat in silence for a moment, nodding slowly. This is a solid lead. I can follow this trail. What will you do? Emily asked. I'll dig into Benton's movements, Sandra replied. If he was in the city the night Alexander was killed, I'll find proof. And if he was the one behind that fake account that transferred money under James's name, we'll get him. Emily's eyes filled with emotion.
Please.
James doesn't deserve to be in a cell for something he didn't do. Sandra gave a small, confident smile. Then let's clear his name. The next few days were tense. Emily could barely sleep. Every time her phone rang, her heart jumped. Every time someone knocked on the door, she hoped it was news, good news. Grace stayed by her side as always. In quiet moments, they sat in the garden and talked softly about Alexander. I still miss him, Emily whispered one evening. I know, sweetheart, Grace replied. You always will, but I think he'd be proud of you right now. Emily smiled faintly. He used to say, the truth always wins, even if it takes time. She looked up at the sky, her voice trembling. Please let that be true. 3 days later, Sandra returned, with a folder full of findings. She spread them out on the dining table, her voice steady. Mark Benton was in the city the night of the murder. I found hotel receipts, surveillance images, and even a call log connecting him to one of the vehicles near the scene. Emily leaned forward, her eyes wide. But that's not all, Sandra added. The money transfer that made it look like James was involved? It came from a fake company registered under Benton's cousin's name. A front. A setup. Emily covered her mouth, her eyes welling up. So it was him. Yes, Sandra confirmed. And here's the best part. He paid off someone to testify they saw James near the scene. That person is now under investigation. Emily sat back in her chair, overwhelmed. You just saved his life. Sandra smiled. You saved it. You never stopped digging. They took everything to the police. This time, the officers were more careful, more respectful. The case had become too public to hide their mistakes. The evidence was reviewed quickly. The lead detective nodded grimly as he flipped through the documents. "This changes everything," he said. "We'll move fast." And they did. Within 48 hours, Mark Benton was arrested. He didn't run. He didn't deny it. Instead, he sat in the back of the police car and muttered, "Reed ruined me. I just gave him what he deserved." The media exploded again. Real killer of CEO Alexander Reed caught. James Carter cleared of all charges. Revenge, lies, and a love story in the middle of it all. But Emily didn't care about the headlines. She just wanted to see James. The morning he was released, Emily stood outside the police station. It was quiet. No cameras. No reporters. Just her. The doors opened. James stepped out slowly, blinking at the sunlight, wearing the same clothes he had been arrested in. He saw her. She took a deep breath and walked toward him. He stopped in front of her, unsure what to say. "I didn't think you'd come," he said softly. "I never stopped believing," she whispered. "I just had to be sure." He reached out and touched her hand. "I was so scared you'd think I was that man I used to be," he said.
"I didn't," she said.
"Not really. I just needed the truth." He nodded, his eyes filling with tears. She smiled through hers. "And now we have it." They didn't say anything else. They didn't need to. Emily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. James held her tightly, like he'd never let go again. Emily and James walked out of the police station hand in hand. The sun was high in the sky, and for the first time in weeks it felt warm again, not just on their skin but in their hearts. They didn't speak much on the ride home. There were no big speeches, no explanations needed. Sometimes silence says enough. James kept glancing at her, as if to be sure she was really there beside him. And every time he looked, she smiled, small, quiet, but real. Grace met them at the door with tears in her eyes. She pulled James into a hug. "Welcome home." "Thank you," he whispered, "for taking care of her, for believing in me." Grace stepped back and gave them both a long, warm look. "You two have been through enough storms. It's time you found peace." The first few days back were gentle. Emily cooked simple meals. James helped her around the house like always. They cleaned, rearranged the living room, and even planted fresh flowers in the garden. It was quiet. It was healing. One evening, Emily sat beside James on the porch swing. The breeze was soft, and the scent of jasmine filled the air. "I still think about Alexander," she said, her voice calm. "I know," James replied. "You always will." Emily turned to him. "Does that bother you?" He shook his head.
"No."
"Because I know he made you stronger. And I know that part of how we found our way back was because of him." She reached for his hand. "I'm grateful for him. But I'm also grateful for you, for staying, for fighting to be better, for helping me believe again." He kissed her hand gently. "We made it, Em. After everything, we made it." In the weeks that followed, life truly began to feel new again. Emily received a formal letter from the government. Alexander's estate and remaining shares in Reed Holdings were officially transferred to her, now that the case was closed. She chose to sell most of the properties, too many memories, but kept one. The house where she and Alexander once dreamed. Not to live in, but to honor him. She turned it into a quiet retreat space, a place for women healing from trauma or sudden loss. She named it the Reed House of Renewal. It wasn't about forgetting him. It was about carrying his kindness forward. James supported her fully. He even helped design the interior, building reading corners, garden benches, and soft, open spaces. "I think he'd love this," James said one day as they finished painting the walls. "Helping people heal, that's what you're good at." Emily nodded, looking around with pride. It's what he would have wanted. At home, their love grew in the softest of ways. There were no grand romantic gestures. Just real, everyday moments. James brushing her hair when her hands were sore. Emily surprising him with coffee in bed on slow mornings. Long walks. Shared laughter. Holding hands across the dinner table. Their bond had been tested by pain, time, and doubt, but it stood stronger now than ever. They didn't rush anything, but with every passing day, they built a life that felt real, whole. And one afternoon, as they sat in the garden watching the sunset, James pulled out a small, velvet box. "I know life hasn't been easy for either of us," he said, "but if you're ready, I'd love to try again. This time, forever." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled and nodded.
Yes.
This time, forever. 2 years later, laughter echoed through the home. Tiny footsteps ran across the polished floors. The sound of soft music played in the background as the smell of fresh-baked bread filled the air. Emily stood in the kitchen, her hands on her hips, watching her daughter dance around the table with a ribbon in her hair. "Careful, Alessia," she said with a warm smile. "You're going to knock something over." The 6-year-old giggled and twirled again. "I'm just practicing for school dance." Emily shook her head, laughing softly, just as James walked in holding their youngest, Eli Alexander Carter, now 3 years old, full of curiosity and questions. "Papa, tell me the story about the garden again," Eli shouted, already climbing out of his father's arms. "Which one?" James grinned. "The one where Mommy used to sit in the chair and dream about flying?" Emily raised an eyebrow from the counter. "Are you turning my wheelchair days into fairy tales again?" James winked at her. "Only the best kind. Life was different now, but better. Simpler.
Real."
Their days were filled with warmth and mess, with noisy mornings and quiet nights, and the occasional tear or tantrum. But it was life. Whole and full. Outside, the garden bloomed just like it had years ago.
The flowers had changed.
The bench was older, but the spirit of that space remained sacred. One section of the garden was special. A small stone with a brass plate sat beneath a rose tree. It read, "In loving memory of Alexander Reed. You showed her she could still shine." The children knew the name. Alessia had once asked, "Was Alexander your friend?" Emily had smiled. "He was more than that. He was a very good man. He helped Mommy stand when she forgot how to." James had stood beside her, holding her hand, as she explained. "And, Daddy?" Alessia asked. Emily knelt down and kissed her daughter's cheek. "Daddy helped Mommy believe that love can return, even after the storm." It wasn't confusing to the children. It was honest. It was beautiful. Love, as they learned early on, could be remembered and still grow again. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, James and Emily sat on the back porch with cups of tea. The sky was painted in orange and pink. The wind was soft. The garden lights glowed gently under the trees. "I still have dreams sometimes," Emily said, watching the stars. "Of Alexander. Of the early days after the accident. Of the pain." James didn't flinch. "It's part of your story. And yours too now," she added. "You came back, even after all we went through." He smiled. "We're more than the pain. We're the healing too." She nodded, then turned to him. "Do you ever wish we could have skipped all the hard parts?" James thought for a second. "Sometimes. But then maybe we wouldn't be here. Maybe we wouldn't be us." Emily smiled, leaned into him, and rested her head on his shoulder. They sat in peace, surrounded by the family they had built and the memory of the love that helped them get there. In the heart of their home, above the fireplace, 3 framed photos sat side by side. One of Alexander and Emily, smiling in the early days of her healing. One of James and Emily on their second wedding day, holding hands in a quiet garden. And one of their children, playing in the yard with joy on their faces. Different moments, different loves, but all one story. A story of heartbreak, forgiveness, second chances, and the quiet power of choosing to love again. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, please subscribe to my channel, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. You can also comment what you feel about the story under the comment section. Thanks for watching.